The grand palace of the Valorian Empire floated in the darkness of space like a dream made solid. It was built from living crystal that grew and changed with the mood of its rulers. Today, the crystal glowed a soft gold color, the color of celebration and alliance. Sergeant Dohon Park stood at the entrance of the great hall and tried not to show how nervous he felt. He was 32 years old, and he had faced death many times in the border wars. He had scars on his body from battles that most people only read about in news reports. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. He was wearing his formal military uniform, the dark blue fabric pressed and clean. His medals hung on his chest, but they felt heavy today, not because of their weight, but because of what they represented. He was not a diplomat. He was not a noble. He was just a soldier who had been in the right place at the right time. 6 months ago, Dohan had been escorting a supply convoy through dangerous space when pirates attacked. The convoy carried food and medicine for 3 Alliance worlds. Dohan and his small team fought for 11 hours without rest. They saved the convoy. They saved thousands of lives. The Alliance noticed. They always noticed acts of heroism, especially from humans. Humanity was still new to the galactic community, still proving themselves. When the time came to choose a representative for the marriage protocol, the Alliance chose Dohan. He did not ask for this honor. He did not want it. But he understood duty. The great hall was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top, soft white wisps floating in the recycled air. Thousands of beings from dozens of species filled the room. They wore clothes made of light and fabric that moved like water. They spoke in languages that sounded like music and thunder. Dohan walked forward, one step at a time. The crowd parted for him. He could feel their eyes on his back, measuring him, judging him. At the far end of the hall, Emperor Talon sat on a throne of living crystal. He was ancient, perhaps 1,000 years old by human counting. His skin was silver and flawless, his eyes like pools of liquid mercury. He did not smile as Dohan approached. Beside the throne, arranged in a perfect line, stood the 7 princesses of the Valorian Empire. Dohan had studied their images before coming here. He knew their names and their accomplishments. The eldest was Princess Mira, tall and radiant, her silver skin glowing like starlight. She was famous throughout the galaxy for her beauty and her intelligence. Everyone expected Dohan to choose her. The other princesses were equally impressive. Each one was perfect in her own way, graceful and powerful and beautiful. They stood in the light, posed like living statues, waiting to be admired. But Dohan was not looking at them. His eyes had found the 7th princess, the youngest, standing slightly apart from her sisters. She was shorter than the others, and her skin was not silver but a faded violet, like a flower that had been left in the sun too long. She was not looking at him. She was looking at a small datapad in her hands, reading something. Princess Yuna. The records called her a genetic anomaly. The palace gossip called her worse things. She was the princess that the Empire tried to forget. Dohan stopped before the throne and bowed properly, just as he had been taught. Emperor Talon looked down at him with ancient, calculating eyes. "Human," the Emperor said. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder in a canyon. "You have been given a great honor. You may choose any of my daughters to be your bride. This marriage will bind humanity and the Valorian Empire together. Choose wisely." The crowd waited. The princesses waited. Princess Mira smiled, confident and beautiful, certain that she would be chosen. Dohan looked at her. Then he looked at each of the other princesses in turn. They were all magnificent. They were all watching him with expectation in their eyes. Finally, he looked at Princess Yuna. She had put away her datapad and was staring at the floor, clearly expecting nothing, clearly used to being invisible. Dohan walked forward. The crowd murmured as he passed Princess Mira without stopping. The murmuring grew louder as he passed the second princess and the third. By the time he stopped in front of Princess Yuna, the hall had fallen completely silent. Yuna looked up at him with shock in her violet eyes. She was smaller than he had expected. Up close, he could see the slight trembling in her hands. "This one," Dohan said. His voice was calm and clear. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then the silence shattered into chaos. Emperor Talon rose from his throne, his silver face twisted with something between confusion and anger. "You choose the seventh? The defective one? Is this some kind of human joke?" Dohan did not turn around. He kept his eyes on Yuna's face. "No joke," he said. "This is my choice." Princess Myra's perfect composure cracked. "Father, this is an insult. He is mocking us." "I am not mocking anyone," Dohan said. Now he turned to face the Emperor. "I was told I could choose any daughter. I have chosen. Unless the Valorian Empire does not honor its word." The challenge hung in the air. Emperor Talon's eyes narrowed. Everyone in the hall knew that he could not refuse without breaking the sacred rules of the marriage protocol. To break those rules would shame the entire empire. "Very well," the Emperor said through clenched teeth. "You have made your choice, human. You will live with it." Dohan bowed again. "Thank you, Emperor." When he turned back to Yuna, she was still staring at him. Her datapad had fallen to the floor. Her hands were shaking badly now. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was so quiet that only he could hear it. "Why would you choose me?" Dohan bent down and picked up her datapad. He looked at the screen and saw pages of text about human history. She had been researching his species. He handed the datapad back to her. "Because you were the only one in this room who brought something to read," he said. "That tells me more than any profile ever could." Yuna took the datapad with trembling fingers. She did not understand this human. She did not understand any of this. Around them, the court buzzed with whispered conversations. Princess Myra's face had turned cold and hard. Advisor Soren, a tall Valorian with calculating eyes, was already sending messages on his communication device. The ceremony continued, but nothing went the way anyone had planned. The human had chosen the forgotten princess. The human had surprised them all. In the shadows of the Great Hall, political alliances shifted. Old plans were abandoned. New plots began to form. And Princess Yuna, who had spent her entire life being invisible, suddenly found herself at the center of everything. She did not know whether to be grateful or terrified. Looking at the scarred human soldier who had chosen her, she felt both. The human ship was called the Bizon. It was small compared to Valorian vessels, built for function rather than beauty. The metal walls were plain gray, and the corridors were narrow. There were no living crystals, no floating decorations, no servants dressed in light. Princess. Yuna found it terrifying and fascinating at the same time. She had been given a small room near the back of the ship. It had a bed, a desk, a chair, and a small window that looked out into the endless blackness of hyperspace. The room was simple, almost empty, but it was hers. For the first 3 days of the journey, Yuna did not leave her room. She sat at her desk with her datapads and books, reading and researching, trying to understand what had happened to her life. She was going to Earth, a planet she had only read about. She was married to a human soldier she did not know. Her entire future had changed in a single moment, and she had no idea why. She kept asking herself the same question. Why did he choose me? It made no sense. Dalhan Park could have had Princess Mira, the most beautiful and accomplished woman in the Empire. He could have had any of her sisters. Instead, he chose the defective one. The embarrassment. The mistake. There had to be a reason. A political reason. A strategy she did not understand. On the 4th day, There was a knock on her door. Yuna froze. She had been avoiding contact with the crew, taking her meals alone, speaking to no one. She was not ready for conversation. The knock came again. "Princess?" A male voice, human. "I brought food. You have not eaten today." It was him. Sergeant Park.Yuna stood up slowly and opened the door. Dalhan stood in the corridor, holding a tray with a bowl of something that steamed gently. He was wearing simple clothes now, not his formal uniform. He looked less like a soldier and more like an ordinary man. "May I come in?" he asked. Yuna stepped aside without speaking. She did not know what else to do. Dalhan entered and placed the tray on her desk. The food smelled strange but not unpleasant. "It is called juk," he said. "Rice porridge. Good for the stomach when you are stressed." Yuna looked at the food but did not move to eat it. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Being kind. Bringing me food. Pretending that this marriage is real." Dalhan pulled the chair away from the desk and sat down. He moved slowly, giving her space, making himself smaller somehow. "The marriage is real," he said. "The alliance recorded it. Your father acknowledged it. What is not real about it?" "You know what I mean." Yuna's voice was sharper than she intended. "You chose me to insult my father, or to make some political point. You cannot actually want this." "Want me?" Dalhan was quiet for a long moment. He looked at her with those strange human eyes, dark brown and unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand why you think that," he said. "In your position, I would think the same thing. But you are wrong." "Then explain it to me." "Because I have been reading and researching for days, and I cannot find a logical reason for your choice." "Maybe the reason is not logical." Yuna stared at him. That answer made no sense. Everything had a logical reason. Everything could be explained if you looked hard enough. Dalhan leaned back in the chair. "Let me ask you something first. What were you reading?" "At the ceremony. When everyone else was posing for attention, you were reading." Yuna hesitated. "I was reading about humans. Your history. Your wars. Your survival. Why?" "Because you are interesting." The words came out before she could stop them. "Your species is young. You should have died 100 times already. Climate disasters. Nuclear weapons. Disease. But you did not die. You kept going." I wanted to understand how. Dalhan smiled slightly. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "And did you understand?" "No. That is why I was still reading." He nodded as if this answer pleased him. At that ceremony, there were hundreds of people. All of them were performing. All of them were trying to be seen. Your sisters stood in the light because they expected to be chosen. They expected to be admired. But you? You were standing in the shadows, reading about humans, expecting nothing. "Because I'm nothing," Yuna said. The words hurt to say, but they were true. "I am defective. My father only brought me to the ceremony because protocol required it. And that is exactly why I chose you." Yuna blinked. "I do not understand." Dalhan leaned forward slightly. "I spent 10 years fighting in the border wars. Do you know what I learned? I learned to see what others miss. In battle, the loudest soldier is not the most dangerous. The most dangerous soldier is the quiet one. The one who watches. The one who thinks." He paused, looking at her directly. "Your sisters stood in the light because they had always been given light. You stood in the shadow because you had been pushed there. But you did not break. You did not give up. You used that shadow to learn, to study, to grow. That is strength, Princess. Real strength." Yuna felt something strange happening in her chest. Something warm and uncomfortable. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her and seen anything but failure. "I could be wrong about you," Dohan continued. "I am a soldier, not a prophet. But I do not think I am wrong. I think you are exactly what you appear to be. Someone who has been underestimated her entire life." He stood up and moved toward the door. "Eat the porridge. It is getting cold. And if you want to talk more, I am usually in the observation deck after dinner. The view of hyperspace is actually beautiful." He left without waiting for her response. Una stood alone in her room for a long time. Then, slowly, she sat down and began to eat the porridge. It was simple food. Nothing like the elaborate meals she had grown up with. But it was warm, and it was given to her without expectation. That made it somehow better than anything she had ever eaten in the palace. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Una began leaving her room. She explored the ship, met the crew, learned their names. Lieutenant Jiwon Beek, Dohan's old friend, was sarcastic and loud, but he was kind underneath it. The other crew members were curious about her, but not cruel. And every evening, she found herself going to the observation deck. Dohan was always there. They would sit together and watch the strange colors of hyperspace swirl past the windows. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence. He asked about her research. She asked about his wars. Slowly, carefully, they began to know each other. One night, Una brought her datapad to show him her thesis. She had spent years writing it in secret, hiding it from her family. It was called The Human Persistence Phenomenon, a study of improbable survival. Dohan read it for almost an hour without speaking. When he finished, he looked at her with something like respect in his eyes. "This is good work," he said. "Really good. Why did you never publish it? Who would listen to the defective princess?" Dohan handed the datapad back to her. "Earth will listen. I will make sure of it." Una did not know how to respond to that. She had never had anyone believe in her work before. Why? She asked again. "Why are you doing all of this?" Dohan thought about it for a moment. Then he said something that stayed with her for the rest of her life. "Because everyone deserves one person who sees them clearly. I think I can be that person for you. And maybe, if you let me, you can be that person for me too." The ship flew on through hyperspace, carrying them toward Earth, toward a future neither of them could predict. But for the first time in her life, Una was not afraid of what came next. She was curious, and that, she was learning, was a very human feeling. Earth was nothing like Una had imagined. She had read thousands of pages about this planet. She knew its history, its geography, its wars, and its triumphs. But words on a screen could not prepare her for the reality of standing on human soil for the first time. The Bison landed in Seoul, in an area called the Reconstruction Zone, centuries ago. This place had been destroyed by climate disasters and conflict. Now it was alive again, a sprawling city of metal and glass and green growing things. Buildings rose high into the sky, and between them, trees and flowers grew in abundance. But what struck Una most was the noise. The Valorian palace was always quiet. Sound was controlled, measured, appropriate. Here on Earth, sound was everywhere. People shouting to each other across streets. Music playing from open windows. Vehicles humming past on invisible magnetic tracks. Children laughing in parks. Dogs barking. Vendors calling out prices for food. It was chaos. Beautiful, overwhelming chaos. "You look terrified," Jiwon said, walking beside her. He was grinning, enjoying her reaction. "Do not worry. You will get used to it in a few years." "A few years?" Una's voice was faint. Dohan appeared on her other side. "Ignore him. He thinks he is funny. The noise becomes normal after a few weeks." They walked through the streets together. People stared at Yuna openly. Some took pictures with their devices. Others whispered to each other. She was probably the first Valorian many of them had ever seen in person, but no one was hostile. Some people even smiled at her and waved. "They are not angry?" Yuna asked, confused. "I am an alien. A stranger. You are also the woman their war hero married," Dahun said. "That makes you interesting, not threatening. Humans are curious by nature. Give them a few days, and they will be offering you food." He was right. Their first destination was not a government building or a diplomatic center. It was a small restaurant on a quiet street, run by an old woman named Yoonji Park, Dohun's grandmother. The restaurant was tiny, with only 6 tables and a kitchen that smelled like heaven. Grandmother Yoonji was 89 years old, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She was shorter than Yuna, which seemed impossible. No one was shorter than Yuna. "So this is the alien princess," Grandmother Yoonji said, looking Yuna up and down. She spoke in Korean, but Yuna's translation device handled the language easily. "You are skinny. Too skinny. Sit down. I will feed you." "Grandmother," Dahun started. "Quiet. I did not ask you." The old woman was already moving toward the kitchen. "You brought a bride home and did not tell me. I had to learn from the news. The news. I am still angry at you." Ji-won tried very hard not to laugh. He failed. Yuna sat at one of the small tables and watched as Grandmother Yoonji disappeared into the kitchen. The sounds of cooking began immediately. Pots clanging, oil sizzling. The old woman's voice giving orders to someone Yuna could not see. "Your grandmother is..." Yuna searched for the right word. "Terrifying?" Dohun offered. "I was going to say impressive." Dohun smiled. "She survived the climate wars. She raised me after my parents died. She rebuilt this restaurant 3 times. Terrifying and impressive are the same thing with her." Food began arriving at the table. Dish after dish, more than Yuna could possibly eat. Rice and soup and meat and vegetables and things she could not identify. Grandmother Yoonji stood over her, arms crossed, watching. "Eat," the old woman commanded. "You look like you have never had a proper meal." Yuna ate. The food was unlike anything she had experienced before. Simple ingredients, cooked with skill and care. No elaborate presentations, no exotic materials from distant worlds. Just good food, made with love. She ate until she was full, and then she ate a little more because Grandmother Yoonji was still watching. Over the following weeks, Yuna spent more time at the restaurant than anywhere else. Grandmother Yoonji put her to work, teaching her to chop vegetables and wash dishes and fold napkins. It was strange work for a princess, but Yuna found that she did not mind Dot at the restaurant. No one cared that she was defective. No one treated her like a failure or an embarrassment. She was just that skinny girl who needed to eat more and learn. To cook properly, Dot, it was the happiest she had ever been. But not everyone was pleased with the situation. Director Hyeben. Cho was the head of human-alien relations. A tall woman with perfect posture and cold eyes. She called Dohan to her office to deliver a warning. "There are factions who see this marriage as weakness," Director Cho said. Her office was high above the city, with windows that looked out over the entire reconstruction zone. "They are saying that you chose the reject princess. That humanity is being mocked. And what do you say?" Dohan asked. "I say that politics is complicated. I say that your personal feelings do not matter as much as the perception of strength." Director Cho's eyes were hard. "The Alliance is watching. The Valorians are watching. Everyone is waiting to see if this marriage means anything or if it is just a joke." Dohan did not respond. He simply nodded and left. The real test came at the diplomatic gala. 3 weeks after their arrival, the gala was held in the Grand Hall of Unity. a massive building where representatives from dozens of alliance species gathered to celebrate cooperation. Yuna wore a dress that grandmother Yunji had helped her choose, deep purple fabric that matched her skin. It was simple compared to what Valorian royalty usually wore, but it was hers. Dohun walked beside her in his formal uniform. He looked uncomfortable, but determined. The room was full of beings from across the galaxy. Politicians and diplomats and military leaders all gathered to see the new human Valorian couple. Yuna felt their eyes on her, measuring her, judging her, and then Ambassador Kilos approached. He was Valorian, an old ally of her father. His silver skin gleamed in the artificial light, and his smile did not reach his eyes. "Princess Yuna," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "What a surprise to see you here. I thought the Empire had finally found somewhere to hide you. Instead, they sent you to the humans." He laughed, a cold and cruel sound. "I suppose that makes sense. The Empire's garbage, sent to match humanity's station." The room went quiet. People stopped talking and turned to watch. While Una felt her face grow hot. She had heard insults before, many times, but never so publicly. Never in front of so many people. Before she could respond, Dohun stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not move quickly or aggressively. He simply looked at Ambassador Kilos with calm, steady eyes. "Ambassador," Dohun said, "I have a question for you." Kilos looked amused. "Ask it, human." "In the border wars, I killed 47 enemy combatants. Confirmed kills. Do you know what they all had in common?" The ambassador's smile faded slightly. "I do not see how. They all underestimated me." Dohan's voice was quiet but clear. Every person in the room could hear him. They thought that because I was small, because I was young, because I was human, I was not dangerous. They were wrong. He took one step closer to the ambassador. Just one step. But it was enough. "My wife is Princess Yuna of the Valorian Empire. She is brilliant, dedicated, and stronger than anyone in this room gives her credit for. Insult her again, and you will learn exactly how wrong you are about both of us." The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then Ambassador Kilos stepped back. His smile was gone completely now, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "I meant no offense," he said quickly. "Just a small joke. Nothing more." He retreated into the crowd without another word. The gala continued, but everything had changed. People looked at Yuna differently now. Not with pity or contempt, but with curiosity. With respect. Later that night, after the gala was over, Yuna and Doan stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Seoul sparkled below them like captured stars. "You did not have to do that," Yuna said. "Defend me like that." Doan shrugged. "Yes, I did. Why?" He turned to look at her. In the soft light, his scars were visible on his face and hands. Marks of all the battles he had survived. "Because you are my wife," he said simply. "And because he was wrong about you." Someone needed to say it. Yuna felt that strange warmth in her chest again. The feeling that had first appeared on the ship and had been growing ever since. "Thank you," she said. Duhan nodded. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His fingers were rough and warm. They stood together in silence, watching the human city glow beneath them. For the first time in her life, Yuna felt like she belonged somewhere. Yuna discovered the conspiracy by accident. She had been analyzing trade data between the Valorian Empire and the outer colonies, trying to understand patterns in resource movement. It was the kind of work she had always loved, finding order in chaos, seeing connections that others missed, but the numbers did not make sense. Ships were moving through sectors where there was no official business. Fuel supplies were being redirected to locations that did not appear on any map. Communication signals were being routed through hidden, Relay stations. Someone was hiding something big. Yuna worked for 3 days without rest, following the trail of data through layers of encryption and misdirection. Her skills as a researcher had never been valued in the palace, but now they became her greatest weapon. On the 4th day, she found the truth. Princess Mira, her eldest sister, was planning a war. The evidence was clear. Military supplies were being moved to secret staging areas. Troop movements were being disguised as merchant convoys. Communication logs showed coordination with a faction of Valorian admirals who believed that humanity was a threat to imperial power. The plan was simple and terrible. Yuna would be killed. Her death would be blamed on human incompetence or malice. The Empire would demand justice. War would follow. Humanity, still young and unprepared, would be crushed. The Valorian Empire would absorb their territory and resources, and Princess Mira would be celebrated as the leader who protected her people from the human threat. Yuna stared at her datapad, hands shaking. She was the key to everything. Her death was the trigger that would start a galactic war. She could run. She could hide. She could try to disappear into the vast human cities and hope that no one found her. But that would not stop the war. Mira would find another excuse, another trigger. The only way to stop this was to expose it completely. Yuna went to do Hundad. She found him in the small apartment they shared near Grandmother Yunji's restaurant. He was reading a report on his datapad, probably some military briefing. When he saw her face, he immediately set the device aside. What happened? He asked. Yuna could not speak at first. She simply handed him her datapad and watched as he read through everything she had found. His expression did not change as he read. He was a soldier, trained to stay calm under pressure. But she could see his hands tighten on the device. She could see the muscle in his jaw clench. When he finished, he looked up at her. You are certain about this? He asked. Double quotes. Yes. I checked everything multiple times. The evidence is solid. Dawn nodded slowly. He did not question her work. He did not ask if she might be wrong. He simply accepted what she had found and began to think about what to do next. They will try to kill you soon, he said. The staging is almost complete. They are just waiting for the right moment. I know. Are you afraid? Yuna considered the question carefully. Yes, she said finally. But I am also angry. My sister wants to use my death to murder millions of innocent people. I will not let that happen. Something changed in Dohan's eyes when she said that. Something like pride. Then we stopped them, he said. Together. He called Lieutenant Jiwan and a team of human special forces operators. They gathered in a secure room in the human military base, a place where no Valorian spy could listen. Yuna presented her findings. Maps, communication logs, troop movements, everything. The soldiers listened in silence, their faces growing more serious with each detail. The conspiracy is coordinated from a hidden station in the outer rim, Yuna explained. If we can capture that station and the evidence stored there, we can expose everything. Princess Mira will be ruined. The war will be stopped before it starts. And if we fail? Jiwan asked. Then I die, and the war happens anyway. Yuna's voice was steady. But at least we will have tried. The planning took 2 days. Dohan and his team studied every detail of the station's defenses. Yuna provided information about Valorian security systems, things she had learned as a child growing up in the palace. Her knowledge of Imperial protocols became their greatest advantage. On the 3rd day, they launched the mission. The strike team traveled in a small, fast ship that could avoid detection. Yuna stayed behind on Earth, but she was connected to Dawn through a secure communication link. She would guide them through the station's systems remotely. The journey took 12 hours. Yuna did not sleep. She sat in the communication center, surrounded by screens and controls, waiting for Dawn's voice. "We are approaching the station," he said finally. His voice was calm, professional. "Preparing for breach." "I am tracking your position," Una replied. "The main security hub is on level 3. If you can reach it, I can disable the alarms and open all the doors." "Copy that." Moving in. What followed was the longest hour of Una's life. She listened to the sounds of combat through the communication link, gunfire, explosions, shouted orders. She guided the team through corridors and around security checkpoints, her voice steady even when her heart was pounding. Do-Han moved through the station like a ghost. Years of combat experience had made him precise and deadly. His team followed his lead, trusting him completely. "Security hub in sight," Do-Han reported. "Heavy resistance. We need a distraction." Una's fingers flew across her controls. "I am triggering a fire alarm on level 5. That should pull some guards away from your position." It worked. The guards split up, rushing to respond to the false alarm. Do-Han and his team pushed through the weakened defenses and reached the security hub. "We are in," Do-Han said. "What now?" "Connect your device to the main terminal. I will download everything." The download took 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Una counted every one. In those minutes, she copied every piece of evidence from the conspiracy's central database. Communication logs, financial records, military orders, everything needed to prove what Princess Myra had planned. "Download complete," Una announced. "You have everything. Get out of there." The extraction was messy. More guards arrived, alerted by the breach. Do-Han's team fought their way back to their ship, taking fire from multiple directions. Ji-Wan was hit in the leg but kept moving. 2 other team members were wounded, but they made it. "We are clear." Do-Han's voice came through the link, rough with exhaustion. All team members accounted for. Package secured. Una closed her eyes and allowed herself one moment of relief. Just one moment. Then she began preparing for the next phase. The evidence was released, simultaneously, to every major news network in the Alliance. Within hours, the galaxy knew about Princess Myra's conspiracy. Within days, the Valorian Empire was in chaos. Emperor Talon, faced with undeniable proof of his daughter's treason, was forced to act. Princess Myra was stripped of her title and placed under arrest. The admirals who had supported her were court-martialed. The entire conspiracy collapsed like a house made of sand. And through it all, one name kept appearing in the reports: Princess Yuna. The Forgotten Princess. The defective one. The one who had uncovered the plot and helped stop a war. For the first time in her life, people spoke her name with respect. When Do-Han returned to Earth, Una met him at the landing pad. He was tired and dirty, with a bandage on his arm where a bullet had grazed him. But he was alive. "We did it," he said. "We did it," she agreed. He reached out and pulled her into an embrace. It was the first time they had held each other like this. His arms were strong and warm around her, and she realized that she was crying. "I was so worried," she whispered. "Listening to the fighting, not knowing if you would survive." "I told you before," Do-Han said quietly. "I know how to see what others miss. And I am very, very hard to kill." Una laughed through her tears. It was not a dignified laugh, not the kind of sound a princess should make. But she did not care. She was not just a princess anymore. She was someone who had helped save millions of lives, and standing there in Do-Han's arms. She realized something important. She loved him. She had no idea when it had happened. Perhaps on the ship, when he brought her food without asking for anything in return. Perhaps at the gala, when he defended her honor in front of the entire diplomatic corps. Perhaps during those long nights of planning, when they worked side by side to stop a war. It did not matter when. It only mattered that it was true. "Doan?" she said. "Yes." She pulled back slightly so she could look at his face. "Thank you. For everything. For choosing me. For believing in me. For being exactly who you are." Doan smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. "You never need to thank me for that," he said. "You earned everything yourself. I just gave you the chance to show who you really were." They stood together as the sun set over Seoul, two people who had found each other against all odds. The war was stopped. The conspiracy was broken. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the galaxy was beginning to change, because of a soldier who saw what others misthought and a princess who refused to be invisible anymore. 1 year had passed since the conspiracy was exposed. Yuna stood at the center of the Galactic Alliance Council chamber, looking out at the assembled representatives of 100 worlds. The room was vast, built to accommodate beings of every size and shape. Lights floated in the air like captured stars, and the floor was made of a material that adjusted to each speaker's comfort. That it was the most important speech of her life. She was no longer the forgotten princess. News reports called her the peacekeeper, the scholar, the bridge between worlds. Her research on human resilience had been published across the galaxy, translated into 40 different languages. Universities on a dozen planets taught her work. But standing here, facing the leaders of the known galaxy, she still felt like that small girl, reading in the shadows of the palace dot. Du-hun was watching from the observation gallery above. She could feel his presence without looking. He had refused to stand on the stage with her. "This is your moment," he had said. "You earned it. I will not take any of it from you." She took a deep breath and began to speak. "1 year ago, I stood in the shadows of my father's throne room," she said. Her voice was clear and steady, amplified to reach every corner of the massive chamber. "I was the 7th princess of the Valorian Empire, the defective one, the embarrassment. I expected nothing from my life because nothing had ever been expected of me." The council listened in silence. Representatives from the Valorian Empire sat among them, uncomfortable with this reminder of their treatment of the princess they had once dismissed. Then a human soldier chose me, not because I was beautiful or powerful or politically valuable. He chose me because he saw something in me that I could not see in myself. He saw strength where others saw weakness. He saw potential where others saw failure. Yuna paused, letting her words settle. "Humans taught me something important. They do not measure worth by what you were born with. They measure it by what you choose to do with what you have. I was born defective by Valorian standards, but I chose to learn. I chose to study. I chose to become useful." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from species she had only read about before. That choice was only possible because one human looked past what I appeared to be and saw what I could become. Sergeant Doan Park did not save me. He gave me the opportunity to save myself. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Even the translating devices seemed to pause. "I stand before you today not as a Valorian princess, but as a bridge between our peoples. I have seen the best of humanity, their courage, their stubbornness, their refusal to give up even when everything seems hopeless. These are not weaknesses. These are the qualities that allowed them to survive where other species would have failed." Yuna raised her chin, her violet skin catching the floating lights. "I propose a new framework for cooperation between the Alliance and humanity. Based on my research, I have developed protocols that will allow us to learn from each other, to share our strengths, to build a future that is stronger together than any of us could be alone." She presented her plans. Trade agreements that would benefit all parties. Scientific exchanges that would accelerate progress. Military cooperation that would protect the entire alliance from external threats. Each proposal was backed by careful research, by data and evidence that could not be denied. When she finished, the chamber erupted in applause. Not everyone applauded. Some Valorian delegates remained still, their faces cold with resentment. Some representatives from other species looked skeptical. Change was never easy, and trust was never given freely. But the vote was clear. The council approved her proposals by a margin that surprised even Yuna. After the session ended, she was surrounded by delegates who wanted to speak with her, to ask questions, to congratulate her. She handled it all with grace, thanks to months of practice and grandmother Yunji's constant coaching. But through it all, her eyes kept drifting up to the observation gallery, where Dahan was still watching. Finally, she escaped the crowd and made her way up to him. He was standing by the window, looking out at the stars. When she approached, he turned and smiled. It was the same quiet smile she had come to love over the past year. "You were amazing," he said. "I was terrified." Both things can be true. He reached out and took her hand. "Your father sent a message during your speech." Yuna's heart tightened. Her relationship with Emperor Talon was still complicated. The exposure of the conspiracy had forced him to acknowledge her publicly, but true acceptance was slow in coming. "What did he say?" "He said he was." Dohan paused, as if testing the words. "He said he was proud. He asked if you would consider visiting the homeworld, to speak with him in person." Yuna did not know how to feel about that. A year ago, she would have given anything to hear those words from her father. Now, she was not sure they mattered as much as they once had. "I will think about it," she said finally. Dohan nodded. He did not push her. He never pushed her. They left the council building together and returned to Earth. Their ship was faster now, a gift from the Alliance in recognition of their service. The journey that once took 40 days now took only 10. Home was still the small apartment near grandmother Yunji's restaurant. They could have moved to a larger place, something more suitable for a diplomat and a princess. But they had both agreed that they liked things the way they were. Grandmother Yunji was waiting for them when they arrived. She was 90 now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "I saw your speech on the news," she said, pulling Yuna into a hug. "You did well, but you are still too skinny. Come, I made food." Some things never changed. They sat together in the restaurant, eating grandmother Yunji's cooking, talking about nothing important. Jiwan came by later, his leg fully healed from the mission a year ago. He brought news from the military and stories that made grandmother Yunji laugh and shake her head. It was a simple evening. A human evening. Yuna had learned to love these moments more than any palace celebration. Later that night, after grandmother Yunji had gone to sleep and Jiwan had returned to the base, Yuna and Dohan walked through the garden behind the restaurant. It was a small garden, just a few trees and some flowers. But grandmother Yunji tended it with the same care she gave her cooking. The night was warm, and the stars were hidden behind the soft glow of the city lights. But Yuna did not miss them. She had seen enough stars to last a lifetime. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Choosing the defective one? It was a question she had asked before, many times in the early days. But she had not asked it for a long time now. Tonight, for some reason, she needed to hear the answer again. Dohan stopped walking and turned to face her. In the gentle light of the garden, he looked older than when they had first met. More tired, but also more at peace. "I spent 10 years at war," he said. "I learned to see what others miss. The quiet ones, the overlooked ones. They are the ones who survive. They are the ones who change things." He reached out and touched her face gently. Over the past year, her skin had changed. The stress of her old life had faded, and her natural pigmentation had slowly brightened. She was still violet, but it was a richer, deeper violet now. Healthy. I did not choose the defective Princess Yuna, he said. I chose the one everyone else was too foolish to see. Yuna leaned into his touch. After all this time, he still knew exactly what to say. I love you, she said. It was not the first time she had said it, but the words still felt new somehow. Still felt important. I know, Dahun replied. I love you too. They stood together in the quiet garden. Two people who have found each other against all odds. A human soldier and an alien princess. An outcast and a warrior. Across the galaxy, their story was becoming a legend. The human who rejected perfection and chose potential. The princess who refused to be invisible. Together, they had stopped a war and changed the course of history. It was a very human legend, the storyteller said. A story about seeing the truth in others. A story about giving people the chance to become who they were meant to be. But for Doan and Yuna, standing in that small garden under the hidden stars, it was not a legend at all. It was just their life, and they were grateful for every moment of it. Grandmother. Yunji watched them from the kitchen window and smiled. She had known from the very first day Dohun brought the skinny alien girl to her restaurant that something special was happening. Humans had always been good at finding diamonds in unexpected places. It was one of their greatest strengths. And now, thanks to a soldier who knew how to see and a princess who refused to give up, the entire galaxy was beginning to understand that everything had changed. Everything was exactly as it should be.